What's happening? Happy Friday to all of you. Thanks for joining me. And man, oh man, there's a lot to get to. There is just a ton to get to, a ton to talk about. I'm going to limit it to 3 topics today. We're going to talk about T. Higgins, the latest on him. We're going to talk about Will Campbell, the latest on the LSU offensive lineman. And we're going to talk about the latest regarding Travis Hunter. There's just so much to talk about. And I don't have 5 hours to talk about it. So I'm going to hit the 3 most important topics today. I will give you the very latest, what's being written, what is being said. But before we get to all of that, I've been mentioning this week that there is going to be a new era of this podcast, and that new era is going to start on Monday. This Monday, March 3rd. This podcast will no longer be called The Nick Cattle Show. That's right. It will no longer be called The Nick Cattle Show. Instead, this podcast moving forward, starting on Monday, will be called Everything Pats. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. Pretty simple why we're changing. There's no mystery what we do. There's no mystery what we talk about. And I think some people, they go to The Nick Cattle Show expecting me to talk about the Celtics and the Red Sox and the Bruins. I want to make it clear. This is a 100% unequivocal, is that a word? Unequivocally, we'll throw that out there, a Patriots podcast. So starting on Monday, Everything Pats is the name of this podcast. Same content, same host. We're not going to change anything as far as how I deliver this podcast to all of you. It does not impact you in any way, shape, or form. We are just simply changing the name of the podcast. And if you watch on YouTube, some things will change in the background. The look of the podcast will change slightly. Everything Pats. That's the new name of the podcast starting on Monday. This Monday, March 3rd, Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. It should help us get some more eyeballs on YouTube as well, because a lot of people, they're not searching Nick Cattles. They're not searching my last name. They're searching Patriots. They're searching Pats. So for the people that are searching for the Patriots and Pats content, they're going to get our content easier by changing the name of the pod to Everything Pats. So that's going to be the new podcast name starting on Monday. All right, let's get to T. Higgins, because there are some conflicting reports about Higgins and whether or not the Patriots would be interested in Higgins if he hits free agency. This started yesterday. Chad Graff at The Athletic wrote the following. New England's blueprint for the offseason does not include pursuing Higgins. The Patriots want to prioritize building through the offensive and defensive lines and will make that goal number 1 of this offseason. So again, Chad Graff says New England's blueprint for the offseason does not include pursuing Higgins. But wait, Mike Giardi wrote about T. Higgins yesterday at Boston Sports Journal. Here's what Giardi wrote. Nothing that I heard from people who know changed my viewpoint. If Higgins becomes available, the Patriots will be a suitor. But as of right now, the wideout is unavailable. Giardi continues to write, I know there's another report out there, unsourced. That's key. So Giardi says the Chad Graff report is unsourced. I know there's another report out there, unsourced, that suggests the Pats wouldn't be in the mix, but Higgins has fans in the organization and would be someone they'd be comfortable spending money on. So yesterday you had Chad Graff saying Patriots would not be interested in T. Higgins. They were not going to pursue T. Higgins. Giardi says, hold up, wait a minute, pump the brakes. That's not going to be the case. The Patriots are indeed interested in T. Higgins if he hits free agency. Then Mass Live today, fantastic piece by Karen Garigian, Chris Mason, and Mark Daniels. They spoke to over 24 sources for this story at Mass Live. And we all know Karen. Karen's an OG of the beat, one of the most trustworthy people that write about this football team. And in the Mass Live story today, they wrote the following. Patriots would love to add a number 1 receiver. And in free agency, the Patriots are viewed as T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, or bust. So Chad Graff says Patriots not going to pursue T. Higgins. if he becomes a free agent. Mike Giardi says, no, if he becomes a free agent, they are going to pursue him. They are interested in him. And then Mass Live, with over 24 sources in their story today, they write, no, the Patriots in free agency, as far as wide receiver goes, it's T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, or bust. So I'll say this. I'm going to roll with Giardi's connections and the fact that he has a sourced story. I'm going to roll with Mike Giardi, and I'm going to roll with Karen Guregian along with Mark Daniels and Chris Mason. I'm going to roll with those two stories. And I'm going to say the Patriots are indeed interested in T. Higgins if he becomes available. I don't think Giardi would write that if he didn't hear it from multiple people. And again, Karen's been around the block for a while. She knows what to do. She knows how to write, how to source stories. Mark Daniels, Chris Mason. So those two stories that came out in the last 24 hours tell us the Patriots, yes, indeed, they would pursue T. Higgins. They're interested in Higgins, and they would pay Higgins. Which brings me to my next point. Money is not a factor. Money is not a factor. Mike Giardi wrote it. Patriots are willing to pay a lot of money to T. Higgins if he's available. Mass Live, again, their story. Patriots in free agency, they're targeting two receivers. Higgins, if he gets there, and Chris Godwin. Both of those guys are going to cost you money. They're seen as the two best free agents. Again, if Higgins is not tagged, they're seen as the two best wide receiver free agents in the market, which tells us the Patriots are willing to pay for that position. We know this already from last offseason when the Patriots put a trade on the table for Brandon Ayuk, and they were willing to pay Ayuk more money than any other team in the league. So it's not about the money. Money is not a factor. Money is not going to get in the way of the Patriots going after T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. It's just not going to happen from what we know, from what we've been told. Now, I also heard a little bit of a theory from Mark Bertrand, my friend Mark Bertrand. Bertrand threw out there, hey, and this is plausible. It's certainly plausible. The Patriots are in CYA mode, right? CYA mode because Higgins told them he's not interested. I don't believe that. I don't believe T. Higgins would tell the Patriots that he's not interested in playing for New England in February. Why don't I believe that? Well, it's not because it's hard to believe that Higgins wouldn't be interested playing for New England. That's, again, certainly plausible. We've talked about it. Higgins might not want to do anything with the Patriots. And I've said throughout the last couple of months, I don't think Higgins is likely, even if he hits free agency, to land here in New England. I would look at the Chargers. I would look at some other teams who are competing and contending. I would look at those teams first before the Patriots. But here's why I don't think Higgins would have told the Patriots already that he's not interested, because it would hurt his market. If you're T. Higgins, you want as many teams as possible to be trying to pay you, right? If he hits free agency, he wants all the teams interested. And even if he's not interested in his heart of hearts, he's not going to tell any team that this early because he wants the bidding to go up. Look at Calvin Ridley. Ridley obviously did not really want to play for the Patriots, but he strung them along. He kept them involved. His team kept talking to the Patriots front office. Why? Because Calvin Ridley wanted to get more money out of Tennessee. So if T. Higgins wants to go to the Chargers, if that's what he really wants to do, he hits free agency and he wants to go to the Chargers, then it helps Higgins to keep the Patriots involved. Because Higgins knows that the Patriots have the most cap space and they have a ton of money to spend this offseason. So you keep the Patriots in conversations. So the Patriots offer money. Then you go to the Chargers, then you go to the Patriots, then you go to the Chargers, and you go back and forth until you get as much money as you possibly can get. I don't think Higgins is into the idea of damaging his own market. It would make 0 sense. And from an agent perspective, that's just bad business. So I don't think this is T. Higgins telling the Patriots that he's not interested in them, and then the Patriots ran to Chad Graff and said, oh, well, we're not interested in him. I don't think that's the case. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I would be in on Higgins. Short term, big money. Call it a 3-year, $100 million deal. That's the offer I threw out a week or two ago on this podcast, and I stand by it. I would be willing to do that. but short term. Because, yes, the injuries that Higgins has gone through, the fact that he's only good for like 12 or 13 games, that does concern me. Some of those, concerns are legitimate. They are legitimate concerns. So I'm offering him a 3-year deal if he hits free agency. Now, if you are out on Higgins and you miss on him and Godwin, the Patriots will have to find multiple weapons as upgrades to help Drake May. They can't go into 2025 with that wide receiver room they have right now. I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. So it might not be Higgins. It might not be Godwin. It might not be a true number one wide receiver, but they best find at least one, if not two, dependable, legitimate, certified NFL wide receivers that are seen as upgrades from what they have right now. They can't roll out the same core in 2025 as they ran out there in 2024. That would be a fail. So if you can't get Higgins, you can't get Godwin, you've got to find somebody, if not multiple people, to help this football team improve at that position. And they have the means. They have the means to address several needs. It's really all about prioritizing, right? And right now, the way I look at it, you've got tackle as the number one priority. For me, tackle is the number one priority, specifically left tackle. Then you've got defensive end. Now with Devon Godshaw, we know he's gone. If he gets traded or released, he's gone. He's not in the plans for 2025. Christian Barmore is still a question mark. We're probably about a month away from hearing about Barmore and where he's at physically. You need defensive tackle help. You need a couple of legitimate NFL tackles now on the defensive side. So I would look at offensive tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle, and then I get to wide receiver and offensive guard. But the Patriots have the means. They have the means. They have the resources to address all of those needs. They're not going to be able to address all of those needs with top-tier talent. Don't get it twisted. But they have the means to do it, to at least fill those holes with actual NFL players that you can believe in. All right. Before we move on to Will Campbell, because there's a lot of interesting things about Will Campbell that has come out over the past 36, 48 hours that I want to cover, because, of course, Will Campbell might be the guy the Patriots draft at 4, underline might. But before I get to Will Campbell, don't forget to help us out. Click that thumbs up. Helps us with the algorithm, as you know. So make sure you like the podcast as you watch and listen. Make sure you also throw a comment in. Alberto threw 2 letters in there. Simple, DK, talking about Metcalf. How about the rumor? It's actually a report. I tweeted this out at Nick C Radio if you want to follow me, at Nick C Radio. There's a report out there that the Packers have offered the 23rd pick in the draft to go along with one of their young wide receivers, either Dobbs or Wicks, for DK Metcalf in a day 3 pick. So that report is out there. So DK obviously will be mentioned an awful lot. So don't forget to like the podcast. Don't forget to comment on the podcast. Those comments also help us with the algorithm. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, my good friends out there. If you enjoy what we do, if you appreciate this content, I'm a one-man band, my own producer, right? My own marketer, my own promoter, my own everything. Don't forget to subscribe. We want to hit 6,500 subscriptions by draft night, that first round of the draft. We've got about 2 months to go. We should be able to get there, but I want 6,500 subscribers. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, my friends over there, don't forget as well to stay in lock here with us. Rate and review. All right, before I get to the critical intelligence regarding Will Campbell, got a couple of super chats I've got to hit. Vitalix, $10 super chat. Thank you, Vitalix. Nick, do the Mason Graham measurements change your mind on him at 4? 296 pounds, shorter arms, smaller hands. Love the new name. Thank you, Vitalix. I appreciate that. I tweeted this out yesterday. Mason Graham, and I'm going to try to get into Mason Graham as we get closer to the draft. We should be able to do that. Obviously, there's just so much going on right now. And the next couple of weeks is going to be free agency, free agency, free agency. But as far as Mason Graham and his measurements, I tweeted out, and I would like to find the tweet. I want to see what's if I can find it, might be tough. But I tweeted out the measurements that Vitalix brings up here regarding Mason Graham. 296 pounds. I know people will tell you that, hey, he lost some weight. He trimmed weight so he could be faster. He can test better. Maybe that's the case. You know, maybe he lost a bunch of weight, 20, 25 pounds, to do a better job at testing at his pro day, because he didn't test at the combine. He didn't take part of anything. He's just going to do the bench press. So he's not doing anything physically on the field at the combine. He's going to do that at his pro day. So maybe he did drop the 20 to 25 pounds because he wants to be quicker and all that stuff. Okay. But to hit Vitalik's point, look, I'm not telling you that Mason Graham is not going to be a damn good football player. I'm not telling you I wouldn't draft him at 4. What I'm saying here is that if you do draft Mason Graham at 4, you have to be absolutely 100% confident that he is special on the field at the next level. We all know what he did at Michigan. If you watch college football, if you like the draft process, we've all seen the highlights. We've all seen him play. He was an excellent football player at Michigan. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not going to write him off and say he's not going to succeed in the NFL because he's shorter and lighter than a lot of other guys. And to highlight the numbers, I found the tweet yesterday from Trevor Sikma of Pro Football Focus. Mason Graham is 6'3", which puts him in the 59th percentile. He's 296 pounds, as Vitalix noted, which puts him in the 26th percentile of defensive tackles. And his arms were 32 inches, which puts him in the 12th percentile of defensive tackles. So his measurements, when you look at his measurements only, and how they stack up to the normal, quote unquote, measurements of a defensive tackle in the NFL, Mason Graham is way, way below the benchmarks, way below. 12th percentile, 26th percentile, 59th percentile. Again, doesn't mean he's not going to be a great football player. That's what the film is for. Aaron Donald was shorter. He was lighter. He wasn't a gigantic dude as far as height and arms and weight. Donald wasn't that guy. But Donald was built like the Hulk. I don't know if Mason Graham is built like the Hulk. Doesn't look it. So you have to be sure, if you're drafting him at 4 overall, you've got to make sure that his skill on the field is more than enough to overcome his measurements, his shortcomings, no pun intended. Thank you, Vitalix, for the 10. Cool Genuine Phil, $2. Sup, Nick. Sup, Phil. Go Celtics, Pats, Red Sox, Bruins. Yeah, Bruins, rough. Retool, please. It's time to retool. Red Sox excited. Think they're a playoff team on paper. Patriots, we'll see what the next couple of months brings us. Celtics, they've flipped the switch. And I know they didn't play well in Detroit the other night. Whatever. It's more of a scheduled loss to me. They've been terrific the last 3 weeks or so. All right, so let's get to this Will Campbell information. Will Campbell intelligence here. We start with my buddy Greg Bedard. He posted this yesterday. Finally solved the mystery until he's officially measured Sunday at the Combine. Will Campbell's arms were measured last spring by the National Football Scouting. And according to a league source, Will Campbell's arm measurement came in at 32 7/8 inches. Now we know the magic number is 33. So Will Campbell last year was measured last spring, a year ago in April, National Football Scouting, and his arm length was 32 7/8 inches, 1/8 of an inch away from 33 inches. Now, why is 33 inches important when you talk about offensive tackles in the NFL? Well, Anthony Reinhard from Football Analytics posted this. Last year, he found that roughly 1/3 of college football tackles taken in the NFL draft kick inside to guard as rookies. So roughly 1/3 of the guys who play tackle in college, they get drafted in the NFL, they immediately switch to guard that rookie season. Almost 1/3 of them. Reinhard continues, the likelihood of a tackle moving inside based on arm length The 50-50 point is right at 33. So if somebody is a tackle in college and he's got 33-inch arm length, he's pretty much 50-50 to play guard or tackle in the NFL. And as the arm length shortens, those numbers drop. Now, how does Dante Scarnecchia feel about arm length? There was an NBC Sports Boston story by Phil Perry that I tracked down from 2018 last night. And here's what Scarnecchia said about offensive tackles, offensive linemen, and arm length. He first said we covet three things when we look at offensive linemen. They have to be smart, they have to be tough, and they have to be athletic enough. Smart, tough, and athletic. Those are the three things that Scarnecchia said in 2018 the Patriots look at. Of course, he didn't bring up arm length. He was asked about arm length. And in 2018, Dante Scarnecchia said, that bleep, talking about arm length, that bleep is way overrated. So Dante Scarnecchia, not too worried about arm length. How do the Patriots feel? Well, thankfully, Mass Live had that bit of news today. Karen Guregian, Chris Mason, Mark Daniels spoke to over 24 sources. And here's what Mass Live wrote about Will Campbell. While LSU offensive lineman Will Campbell's NFL position has been hotly debated, the Patriots see him as a tackle. Arm measurements be damned. So Mass Live tells us the Patriots, even if Will Campbell on Sunday measures shorter than 33 inches in arm length, the Patriots still view him as a tackle. They have evaluated him as a tackle. They believe he is a tackle. And if they drafted Will Campbell in late April, they would be drafting Campbell as a tackle. Not as a guard, but as a tackle. Now, I know some people have brought up Peter Skoronski when Vrabel was down in Tennessee. Peter Skoronski ended up being a guard. He was drafted, I think, 11th overall. He was drafted as a tackle. He was slid inside to guard and has stayed at guard. And a lot of people have shown this video of Mike Vrabel years ago when they drafted Skoronski, talking about arm length and how he wasn't too worried about it. Skoronski's arm length was closer to 32 inches than 33. I think he was 32 and a quarter inches. So that's asking a lot. I mean, the guy pretty much had 32-inch arms. So he was much closer to 32 than 33. Will Campbell, if he's 32 and 7/8, and we'll see on Sunday, maybe he's even 33 now. But at 32 and 7/8, he's much, much closer to 33 than 32. Skoronski was closer to 32 than 33. And there's tons of scenarios, so let's talk about them. Let's talk about these draft scenarios. Now that we know Will Campbell measured in last April at 32 and 7/8, we know that the Patriots, according to Mass Live, view Campbell as a tackle. No matter what happens. No matter what happens on Sunday, when Campbell gets measured, the Patriots feel like he's a tackle. Some big news earlier today. When we look at the draft, when we look at the fourth pick, Matthew Stafford has decided to stay with the Rams. He spoke to the Giants. He spoke to the Raiders. A trade would have had to happen. Stafford staying in L.A. Now, that makes it more likely. I don't think it's likely, but it makes it more likely than it was yesterday that the Giants could draft a quarterback at 3. It makes it more likely that the Raiders could want to move up to 4 and make a deal with the Patriots to draft Shedeur Sanders. So Stafford staying in L.A. takes one quarterback off the market. Now, there are reports that the Giants are speaking with Aaron Rodgers. If they end up signing Aaron Rodgers when he's inevitably cut by the Jets, that seems to me like it's a one-year kind of deal for Rodgers. So would the Giants still draft a young quarterback and develop that quarterback behind Rodgers? I don't know. But the fact that Stafford is staying in L.A. makes it more likely that 2 quarterbacks can go in the top 3. Again, it's not a guarantee. It's not even, I wouldn't even say it's likely at this point, but it's more likely that 2 quarterbacks can go in the top 3. And of course, if 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3, that means the Patriots are looking at Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Now, I think from everything that I've watched, everything that I've read, everything that I've listened to, I think we can get rid of the Abdul Carter dream. I don't think Carter is falling to 4. Even with this stress reaction injury, I don't think Carter is going to be there. I think he is off the board in the first 3 picks. So I'm not even really looking at Carter. But if Carter, let's say Carter and Hunter, they're both gone by 4, then my question, if no Hunter, no Carter, then my question is, did the Patriots sign Ronnie Stanley in free agency? Because that would also change the math. Here's the latest on Ronnie Stanley. Again, that Mass Live story with over 24 sources. Here's what they wrote. If Stanley hits the open market, New England is expected to have serious interest. So the Patriots, it sounds like Ronnie Stanley is up near the top of their board in free agency. They would have, quote unquote, serious interest, which tells me they would be willing to pay Ronnie Stanley a ton of money. How about the other guys? This is where it gets interesting. Mass Live writes that talent evaluators are not as high on second-tier options such as Cam Robinson and Alaric Jackson. Alaric Jackson, I discussed this on Greg's pod the other day. Alaric Jackson has 32.5-inch arms, by the way. So if you're worried about arm length, you would be worried about Alaric Jackson. So it sounds like the Patriots, when they're looking at tackles, Ronnie Stanley above and beyond is their number 1 target. They don't sound like they're enamored with Alaric Jackson or Cam Robinson. So if the Patriots don't sign Ronnie Stanley, and you're looking at no Travis Hunter, no Abdul Carter at 4, and Stanley you didn't sign, to me, Will Campbell is the pick at 4. That's what I think. And that's what I think it should be. If there's no Hunter, there's no Carter, and you did not sign Ronnie Stanley in free agency, and I guess we could say you didn't trade for a tackle if that would happen, which is very unlikely. If you don't have Stanley at tackle and there's no Hunter or Carter sitting there at 4, I would pick Will Campbell. Right now, February 28th, 2025, 3:27 Eastern Standard Time, I'm drafting Will Campbell at 4 if there's no Hunter, no Carter, and you did not sign Ronnie Stanley. And no pun intended, but I don't believe that Will Campbell is a reach at 4 if you think he's a tackle. And again, Mass Live tells us that the Patriots believe he's a tackle. So that's the premise. If you believe he's a tackle, and look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Will Campbell is a tackle. I can't break down all the nitty-gritty of offensive line play. It's not my wheelhouse. That's Bedard. That's Lazar. That's Brandon Thorne, Taylor Kyles. That's not my ball game here. Doug Marrone, Jason Hotaling, Robert Kugler, Josh McDaniels, Mike Vrabel, and also Dante Scarnecchia, who's a phone call away. If those 6 human beings believe that Will Campbell's a tackle, then hey, that's what the premise is. Will Campbell's a tackle. So if Carter and Hunter are gone by 4 and you didn't sign Ronnie Stanley, I'm drafting Will Campbell at 4. He's not a reach. You can look at these consensus drafts. He's like 6th, he's 8th. He's seen as a top 7 or 8 player in this draft. And if you think he's a tackle, then he's really a top 5 or 6 player in this draft. So drafting him at 4 is not a huge reach. And you have to trust your staff. You've got to trust Marrone, who's been around forever. You've got to trust Hotaling and Kugler, Vrabel, McDaniels, Scarnecchia. You've got to trust those guys. Like Marrone and Scarnecchia alone, if they tell you they believe he can play tackle, then I'm believing he can play tackle. Who am I to say that Doug Marrone and Dante Scarnecchia are wrong? Nick Cattles in Foxborough, Massachusetts, who's done talk radio, is going to sit here and tell you that he knows more about tackle play and guard play than Scarnecchia and Marrone? Come on. That would be disingenuous of me. I'm not going to do that. It's not my style. So if Marrone and Scarnecchia are telling me that dude's a tackle, then I'm believing that dude's a tackle. And if they're wrong, then they're wrong. They got it wrong. But that's what I'm going with. Left tackle is your number 1 need. It's your number 1 priority. I've said that from the very beginning of this offseason, and I will continue to say that. He is your number 1. That's your number 1 spot that you're looking to fill. You have no legitimate options on the roster right now to play left tackle. None. Not a single one. And if you don't go out there and sign Ronnie Stanley, even if you sign somebody like Jedrick Wills, I'm not going to believe that Jedrick Wills is going to be able to step right in and play left tackle for you. So you have nobody on this roster right now that you can believe in that could play that position. So that's it. Protect Drake May. Priority number one, protect Drake May. If there's no Carter, if there's no Hunter, and you didn't sign Ronnie Stanley, I'm drafting Will Campbell at 4. Now, with that said, if there is a shred, and I mean a shred of doubt, that Campbell is capable of playing tackle, if there's just a shred of doubt, you can't take him at 4. If you believe there's a chance he ends up playing guard, you can't take him at 4. Again, that's going to be up to, Marone and Hotanley and Kugler, and if they call Scarnecchia, which I would imagine they would, if you feel like there's a chance that he plays guard, if he slips inside, I'm not drafting a guard at 4. So I'm out on it. But if you tell me he's a tackle, I'm drafting him there. And Campbell is really a Vrabel guy. I mean, you talk about effort and finish. Vrabel always talks about effort, finish being the two most important things. That's what Campbell's about, effort and finish. Dane Brugler writes that Campbell is rugged in the run game, and he's got leadership for days. All right, Travis Hunter talk. Travis Hunter talk coming up in a minute. Want to get to the latest on him because there's a lot out there on Travis Hunter. But first, I said this at the top of the show. I'm going to say it again. Starting this Monday, new era of the podcast. I will still be here. Same content, same guy delivering that content. Same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Nothing is going to change for you, but we are going to change the name of the podcast, and we're going to change the look of the podcast a little bit. Starting on Monday, this podcast will be known as Everything Pats. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. That's the new name starting this Monday. So don't be freaked out. You don't have to do anything. Don't be thrown off. Don't be blindsided. Everything Pats is the new name starting on Monday. And, of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help us drive that algorithm. All right, Derek, $5 super chat. Thank you, Derek. With how thin left tackle is in free agency, I think Campbell is the right pick. I mean, think about it this way. Left tackle this year is, I would say, much deeper than last year. And that's why I always get a kick out of people getting mad about what the Patriots did last offseason at left tackle, because I keep asking, what would you do? Now, you could have drafted Brandon Coleman. If that's your answer, then fine. But free agency just isn't great. It's mostly not very good anymore because teams retain their guys. So at least you've got, Ronnie Stanley, Alaric Jackson, apparently, reportedly. Mass Live says the Patriots aren't big on Alaric Jackson or Cam Robinson. You do have Dan Moratz out there from Pittsburgh. You do have Jedrick Wills from Cleveland. I've brought him up a couple of times. But it certainly sounds like it's Ronnie Stanley. And if Ronnie Stanley doesn't get the free agency or the Patriots can't get a deal done, then they don't really like many of the other guys. So we'll see what happens. But, Derek, you're right. I mean, if you don't get Stanley and Carter and Hunter, who are the two blue chip, two best players in this draft, if they're not at there at 4, then I'm drafting Will Campbell. I'm listening to Scarnecchia, Marone, anybody else. Vitalix, $2 super chat. Welcome to the New England Patriots, Will. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. All right, let's get to Travis Hunter. A lot of Travis Hunter talk. Cam Wolfe this week posted the following. We all know the Titans have the number 1 pick. So Brian Callahan, the head coach of Tennessee, and Tennessee's GM, Mike Borgonzi, said they view Hunter as primarily a cornerback. So Tennessee evaluates Travis Hunter, and they feel like if he was going to major in a position, he would major at cornerback. What's interesting is the Browns have the 2nd pick, and the Browns GM, Andrew Berry, said that they view Hunter primarily as a wide receiver. So the team with the 1st pick says, we see Hunter mostly as a corner. Team with the 2nd pick says, we see Hunter mostly as a wide receiver. What does Hunter think? Well, Evan Lazar posted this. Travis Hunter says it's up in the air when asked what position teams want him to play in the NFL. Hunter says some teams view him as a receiver, some as a defensive back. Hunter on what side of the ball he'd rather major in. Quote, I want to play 100% on both sides of the ball, but it's up to the organization. So Travis Hunter says he wants to play full-time wide receiver and cornerback. I don't think that's realistic. Not 100% of the time at the NFL level. Here's what Mass Live wrote. Again, that story, check it out. There's a lot more in this story than what I've shared today. It's tremendous work by Chris Mason, Karen Garigian, and Mark Daniels. Here's what Mass Live wrote about Travis Hunter. Defensively, the Patriots believe the best cornerback in the draft is Travis Hunter. Offensively, the Patriots believe the best wide receiver in the draft is Travis Hunter. The Patriots love Hunter. They think he's the best corner and the best receiver in this draft class. They love him. Now, a quick tidbit that's interesting. Today, Hunter measured in, and unlike Mason Graham, who I think his measurements disappointed some people, the measurements for Hunter actually came in and I think likely surprised some people. The number surprised me. Hunter measured in over 6 feet tall, and here's the telling number. Hunter weighed in at 188 pounds. Some people thought Hunter might be in the 170s. Some people thought he'd be 170 to 175. He weighed in at 188. Travis Hunter is almost 190 pounds. And so that makes me feel even better about Travis Hunter because he's about 190. You might be able to get him to 195 to 200 pounds, somewhere in that range. So he's bigger than I thought he was going to be, which is good news. If Travis Hunter is there at 4, right now, February 28th, 2025, 3:36 Eastern Standard Time, if Travis Hunter is there at 4, I'm picking Travis Hunter. I reserve the right to change my mind. We've got 2 months until the draft, but that's where I'm at. So to recap, if there's no Hunter, no Carter, and you didn't sign Ronnie Stanley, I'm drafting Will Campbell. If Travis Hunter is sitting there at 4, unless you get knocked over by a crazy, overwhelming kind of trade offer, I'm drafting Travis Hunter at 4. And I've thought a lot about this. I've gone back and forth. I've been torn. But the Patriots ultimately need blue chip talent. And Travis Hunter is a blue chip talent. He and Abdul Carter are the 2 best players in this draft. If you have a chance to draft one of the 2 best players in the draft at number 4, then I'm doing it. The thing I like about what Travis Hunter said at the Combine this week is that he's leaving his future, right? He's leaving his future position and how he's going to be used. He's leaving that to the organization, whoever drafts him. And I think that says a lot about Hunter. He's not trying to dictate where he's going to play. He's not trying to put pressure on the team who's going to draft him. He could have easily said, I'm a cornerback first, or I'm a wide receiver first, but he didn't do that. He's leaving it up to the team that drafts him to decide his fate. And everything you read about Hunter and everything I've heard about Hunter, the guy is a tremendous teammate. He's a tremendous teammate. His character, reportedly, is off the freaking charts. And so when he goes out there in front of the media and he says it's going to be up to the organization, I think that shows us that character that people speak of. And that's why people love Travis Hunter off the field. He's willing to give whatever he's got to give to help his team out. He's not out there trying to dictate the terms. He's not out there trying to tell people, oh, if you're going to draft me, this is where I want to play. No. He would like to play 100% of the time, as he said, but it's up to the organization. And I think that speaks volumes. He gets it. Remember the Drake May stories last year about how he passed up NIL deals and he wouldn't sign big NIL deals unless his offensive line and his teammates were involved? And we had all these stories about Drake May and how Drake May's character was awesome, coming from a family full of, guys that played sports and all of that, and that Drake May was somebody who truly, truly got it, quote unquote. Hunter's another one of those guys that gets it. So no questions about his character, no questions about how he's going to be a teammate. He's one of the 2 best players in this draft. He has legitimate wide receiver one potential. So if you don't get T. Higgins, you don't get Chris Godwin, he has legitimate wide receiver one potential. When he walks into the facility, if he gets drafted at 4, he walks into the facility at Gillette. He's the best receiver in that room. As soon as he's drafted, he's the best receiver on this team. Again, given the current roster, things can happen. But right now, if Hunter was drafted tonight, he would be your best receiver. And you could have the Drake May, Travis Hunter combination for the next decade. If Drake May proves to be who he looked like he was last year, for most of the time, he had those flashes of looking like a franchise quarterback that you can bank on. If he continues to develop and he becomes that no doubt franchise guy, and you've got him and Travis Hunter together as a tag team for the next 10 years, I think you're doing pretty well. And really, what's the worst case scenario if you draft Travis Hunter? The worst case scenario is that the worst case scenario is that he completely bombs out of the league, which I don't think many people believe would happen. But as long as he stays healthy, the worst case scenario is you could end up with 2 young, shut-down cornerbacks in Christian Gonzalez and Hunter. If you decide that he's going to play corner, you've got Gonzalez, you've got Hunter, and then you add to the defensive line via free agency in this draft. And now all of a sudden, especially if Barmore comes back healthy, all of a sudden, you got a really difficult defense to play against. 2 shutdown corners, 2 number 1 guys on the outside. You address the defensive line in free agency. You draft 1 or 2 young defensive linemen to go along with those cornerbacks. And now life is very difficult for any offense that plays against you. Now, of course, if you draft Hunter over Will Campbell, you obviously need to find tackles somehow, some way. Whether you do that in free agency, whether you do that via trade. If you draft Hunter, you have to have somebody there at left tackle that has actually played the position in the NFL. And I'm not talking about Vidarian Lowe. But that's how I feel. If Hunter's there at 4, I'm drafting him. And again, that's today. We got 2 months. Things can change. But from what I know right now, I would draft Hunter at 4 if he was there. If he's not there at 4, and you didn't get Ronnie Stanley, especially, then I'm drafting Will Campbell. Now, if you did get Ronnie Stanley, Hunter and Carter are not there at 4, now I'm really looking to trade down, or I'm looking at one of the better defensive players in the draft, right? Whether that is Mason Graham or Mykel Williams, one of those guys. That's when I start looking at those names. But that's what I'm looking at right now. New era starts on Monday. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast, will be the new name of this podcast starting on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. When we go live, I'll still be here. It's the same show, just a name tweak. It'll look a little bit different on YouTube. You'll get the gist when we pop up on Monday. But Everything Pats, the new podcast name. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your fellow Patriots fans, Everything Pats. What podcast do you listen to? Everything Pats. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Help us out. Continue to build this community. Like, comment, subscribe. Everybody enjoy your Friday. Everybody enjoy your weekend. We're back on Monday unless something big breaks, and it might. We're back on Monday when it will be called Everything Pats. Till then, be well.